Hey, howdy, hey y'all, what is going on? It is time to build Gucci's cage. Let's get to it. Holy smokes, we've got a ton of supplies here for her setup. So we're gonna go through everything, all of the different supplies we've got to put in her cage. Then we're gonna start laying everything out, kind of like you see here, to build her cage. But we've got a lot of work to do, so I think we're gonna get ready, get started on building Gucci's enclosure. And of course, as I said, we're gonna show you how we're gonna build this setup, what all we're gonna use, all the different products that we purchase, things like that. Starting off, of course, you're gonna need a 75-gallon tank. We've got our 75-gallon tank here. And if you watched last video, you saw me put this divider on Gucci's cage. This divider is held up just fine without any issue, so that is good news for us. Now, being that we have flex glued our divider and we are not having any sort of issue at all, it is time to start building our background with our foam and our waterfall pumps and everything that we've got here. So we've got, as I said, a ton of supplies. We have got river pebbles for her aquatic area. We've got drainage pebbles for the land area. We've got a ton of cans of spray foam, which will be our main ingredient. We've got some vines for some extra kind of three-dimensional decor. We got a small turtle clean filter for her cage. We've got some aquatic plants, some various different aquatic plants for her cage as well. Some flower pots, just in case you never really know. We've got some waterfall pumps. I got two. We'll probably just use one, but I have two just in case we need it. Waterfall tubing. This is 1/2 inch tubing. This will be very important for the waterfall. Then we've got silicone and flex glue. We've got a bunch of different knives, gloves, tools, things like that that we may use for this setup. A caulking gun. We've got a caulking gun. We got some stone, some dragon stone here. Some magnolia pods, magnolia leaves, live oak leaves, organic charcoal for the substrate, jungle mix for the substrate, sphagnum moss for the substrate, a bunch of moss down here, some BioShot for the substrate, Gorilla Gel Glue for the enclosure in the background, a chalk marker just in case we need to mark anything off, stuff like that, a wrench, we just have a wrench, okay? Then moving over here, we've got a huge tub full of cork and other kind of decor. We've got this little skull guy. I don't even know what this guy's here for, but we've got the skull guy. We've got a ton of cork and building materials. We've got a ton of different pieces that we can use in different ways. We've got some of this like PVC pipe stuff. I'll show you what that's going to be for here later on. We've got all these other different branches and universal rocks. We've got a bunch more universal rocks, which are false rocks that look real, but they're fake. And we've got a bunch of these as well. And then you cannot forget our plants. You cannot forget the plants at all, and they're gonna look really good in Gucci's cage. We've got some bromeliads down there and just a bunch of other different various plants. But now that we've talked about all of the stuff that we're gonna be using in this setup, it is time to start laying her setup out. This is a process that takes me sometimes hours to do, but basically we're gonna lay everything out how we like, how we think looks good, and what'll look best for her enclosure. Of course, your cork and your other branches and whatnot are gonna come very handy at this moment. We're also gonna take our waterfall pump here and kind of set this out and see how we want our waterfall to look as well. And well, yeah, let's get started on building this giant setup. Here goes nothing, I guess. First things first, let's get our pump opened up here and see how we're gonna lay our pump out, because the waterfall in her enclosure is gonna be very, very important. So let's go ahead, get this guy out, get all the pieces out that we're gonna need here. Boom, okay, there we go. Okay, so first things first, step number one, we're going to run our cord through this tube. The reason why we're gonna run the cord all the way through this tube is because in case we have an issue with the pump not working, we can always pull the cord out without it being stuck in the foam, and we can replace the pump. Now that we've gotten our pump in and the cord has run through the tube, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take our waterfall tube and we're gonna start to run this however we like across the glass. Now I'm gonna be straight honest with you guys. Whenever it comes to doing something like this here, you're simply gonna have to get creative. You're just gonna have to get creative. When it comes to building waterfalls, I like to run the waterfalls through cork tubes and going out of the cork. I like to run them off pieces of wood, rocks, things like that. You don't want to have the tube just stick out and just shooting water to the ground. You want it to look natural, you want it to flow evenly. So just keep that in mind and get creative. And that is exactly what we're about to do here. We're about to get creative. We're gonna get some cork pieces and we're gonna have some waterfalls going. I want the waterfall to drain towards the center of her water area, so be creative. And boom, we have returned with our backdrop. Now I still might be doing some minor adjustments, but we have made a good amount of progress. So far I'm starting to like the look a bit more of how it's going to turn out. But like I said, we've still got more work to do. Now one of those adjustments is this right here. I'm going to flip the camera around and show you. As you can see, I have flex glued our giant universal rock in. I've also flex glued the tube here where the water is going to be pouring out of. So if we step over to this side of the cage, if we go, this is how it's going to look. So we've got our tube right there. The water is going to pour out and across and down this rock wall here. As it pours down, it should create a really nice waterfall effect into Gucci's water portion. I personally wanted to do that sort of waterfall effect rather than using a piece of cork, just because I like the look of the water pouring off of the rocks into the water. But honestly, that's sort of personal preference. We've also got our filter here running up and our pump here running up through the tube, which I also flex glued in just so it would stay in place a little bit better. We've got some of our smaller universal rocks, some cork pieces, and things like that laid out throughout the enclosure. I also took this little round cork piece right here, and if you look from the bottom, I put a layer of mesh. That layer of mesh will basically allow me to use it as a planter. So I'll put moss at the bottom, then I'll put dirt, and then plant a plant out of that little spot. But yeah, so far so good. The cage is turning out really fantastic down there. Now I'm still going to make some minor adjustments to the background, but as I finish up those adjustments, well, we're going to get into using our foam sealant to create the background. So once I get the cork and everything like that in place, I'll pick up the camera where we get ready to foam the background in. I've done many cages with foam backgrounds like this giant beautiful one here, or even some of my snake cages there as well. But yeah, let's finish making our adjustments and then get to foaming. Okay, once you've added your foam, we've got to work quickly, and we've got to take scoops on scoops on scoops of this jungle mix and just literally pour it across the background here. Try not to make too much of a mess, but you want this jungle mix to be spread out evenly. So I will catch you guys in just a second. Let's go get this jungle mix on. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, boom. Whoa. Okay, well there we go. The jungle mix has been mixed across the background, and if we step around to the front here, you can kind of get a slight idea of what it's going to look like. And holy smokes, this tank looks so good. I am so pumped to set this thing up. But once again, we've got to let this foam cure for about 24 hours or so. So I'll pick up the camera then once this foam is cured, or whenever I have time to finish this project. But guys, stay tuned for this setup, and hey, I'll catch y'all here in about a day, 2 days, something along the lines of that. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Whoa, okay, well we are back, and it has been several days, and well, the cage is almost complete. Would you look at that behemoth, guys? So we've stood the cage up. Obviously the background's holding just fine. The next thing that we need to start working on is carving all this excess foam back and siliconing back over it. So that's going to be the next thing we work on. Once we do that and the silicone has dried for several hours, then we can actually start the fun part of getting it up on the shelf there and planting it and getting it completely set up and ready to go. We will also need to shop back out all of this excess dirt, which is not an issue. This is completely normal. when building cages, especially if you're putting dirt directly on the foam. But once we get this dirt vacuumed out and away from the pumps and filters, and we get the silicone on the background, then we can actually start setting it up with plants, springtails, isopods, all of that fantastic stuff. So yeah, we've got our silicone there, our wonderful caulking gun here, and without further ado, we're gonna take one of our trusty dusty knives that I've used for a lot of projects. This guy right here, I've used this for so many projects, and we're gonna start carving back the foam. We're gonna start cutting back the foam kind of like this right here. So we're gonna take it, carve, all the way back, all across the whole backdrop. Once we carve it, then we'll smear our silicone across the pieces that we've carved, and then we'll add more dirt on top. Gucci is in her old cage. She's being a real trooper with us, guys, but look at how giant her setup is, and look at how good it looks on the rack. And now the next thing we need to do is get her long strip light on the top. So let's do that right now. Here we go. Holy crap, I'm already in love with this cage, and we haven't even planted it yet. Just wait till we get this thing fully set up. Oh, literally, this thing looks nuts. Oh my goodness, I'm about to flip out, y'all. Enough waiting, guys. The time has come. It is time to build Gucci's permanent new home. Before we get too far ahead, I want to show you a couple of things. There are certain spots where foam is showing. Keep in mind, we've got a whole tray of moss down there that we're going to be concealing a bunch of different places. I left certain spots open on purpose so that I could work moss and other things into it. I also didn't worry about wasting too much silicone down here because, of course, our whole dirt level is going to cover this area up. This light is getting annoying, so let's just turn this off here. Let's do the white mode. There we go. Peace and quiet. I'm not sure. Should we start with the background first? Should we start with the land? Should we start with the water? I think we're going to start with the background first and then work our way down. Alrighty, y'all. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use some of our Gorilla Gel Glue here, if the camera will focus on it. Then we're also going to use our miniature palletarium freaking shovel thing to build cages like this. What we're going to do is we're going to paste some glue, spread it around with our shovel, and then add some moss. We're just going to repeat that process across the whole background of this cage. Once we do that, we will then move on from there. Let's shake it up and get ready to add our glue onto the foam. We've got our glue ready. Let's go ahead and add some glue. Just like so. We're just going to create a good little smear, not too much. And we have to work quickly because this glue literally dries in like 12 seconds or so or something like that. And boom, there we go. We're going to smear it around, put a little bit on our rock here. And now let's add our moss. Go ahead, add some moss just like so. Do not be shy to add a pretty good glob. Add your moss, pat it down gently, and then we will continue to the next spot. And look at that. It's already starting to look nicer and nicer. We have added moss all across the background, and wow, this thing looks fantastic already. If we step back here in the reptile room, this thing stands out insanely. We will work on adding more moss once we get more of the bottom area set up. So now let's start setting up her land portion, then we'll set up her water portion, and then we'll add more finishing touches. The first thing we're going to add are our Leca expanded clay pebbles. They're basically just, like it says, clay pebbles that you pour across the bottom. Their job is to act as the drainage layer and keep the water separated from the dirt. Because over time, as that dirt gets sprayed down and holds more moisture, it's going to start to drain to the bottom. And as it drains to the bottom, we need some of these Leca clay pebbles to absorb the water and keep it from once again getting into the dirt. So in 3 seconds, let's get these pebbles in. 3, 2, 1. Whoa, well there we go, kinda. And boom, lava rocks, clay pebbles, and everything else down there is added. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna use some window screen and basically cut it to shape and add it on top of the lava rocks. We're gonna try to do 2 layers just so that there's more protection, but otherwise 1 layer will work. There we go, our 2 layers of mesh is in. It is starting to come along fantastically. Now that we've added our mesh and our drainage layer, it is time to add substrate. I'm going to be using a substrate mixture of jungle mix here, charcoal, leaf litter, sphagnum moss, some of Gucci's old substrate as well. Now I'm using some of her old substrate just because it's loaded with beneficial bacteria and springtails and isopods. So those springtails and isopods will kind of jumpstart her cage's bioactive setupness sort of deal. So we've got a slightly different hide than Gucci's original hide down there. This one also fits the theme a little bit better, and it actually fits in the cage. That guy was actually too big. This one will fit in the cage and still give Gucci room to go under and hide comfortably. Now, this cage is coming along quite well, quite incredibly. The next thing we're going to do is start planting the enclosure. There's a lot to film here and a lot to build. So hopefully I don't forget anything when it comes to making her setup, because there is a lot. And to be honest, I'm quite overwhelmed. I'm a little bit overwhelmed. And without further ado, guys, the most exciting part, let's plant this enclosure. Here we go. Guys, our aquatic setup is coming along. We've added our rocking, our pebbles, our fake plants, some vines across the bottom. Now it's time to fill up the aquatic section. Once we do that, we've got all 3 of our live aquatic plants that we're going to be adding into the setup. Some of these look pretty cool. I also chose this one to create that grassy sort of environment that you would naturally find where toads like Gucci are found. Y'all, our setup is pretty much complete, but I'm going to add some BioShot just to kind of add, as it says, a supplement of beneficial microorganisms and nutrients for bioactive terrariums. So we're going to sprinkle some of this throughout the setup, just so once again there's a little bit more of beneficial bacteria and things like that. Once we place our BioShot throughout the cage, we're going to spray it down very heavily and then show it to you guys. Oh my goodness, this thing looks nuts. This cage here that I'm not going to show you guys looks nuts. Whew. Well, y'all, we have completed the setup for the most part. It's right in front of me, and wow, just wow. This is definitely by far our best setup yet, and I know I say that every single time we build a cage, but I kid you not, this thing looks insane. This setup, guys, let me just flip the camera around and let you guys take a look at Gucci's new home. We haven't added her yet, but we're gonna look at her home first before we add Gucci. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Look at that monstrosity. Oh my goodness. We've got the waterfall flowing back there. We've got our filter oxygenating and moving the water. We have got our fern and our bromeliads sprouting and growing across the enclosure. I also put the doors on, as you can see, and the doors are almost crystal clear. You can see through them really well. We've got our magnolia leaves on the bottom, magnolia pods, moss and other plants. This thing is nuts. We've got over 12 different types of plants. We've got ferns, we've got bromeliads, we've got all these little viney plants. You name it, we've got a little bit of everything in this enclosure. We've got some color up here, we've got some pattern down here, we've got a good vibrant growth over here, and this thing is gonna be so awesome to just wake up in the morning and just look at it. Just stare at it and look at this cage in the morning or whenever. Gucci's gonna have her own jungle, her own rainforest inside of our reptile room. This 75-gallon front opening enclosure. This thing was not a cheap setup, so make sure you buy my merch, buy my animals, watch the video all the way through, whatever it may be, so I can help pay back for all of the money and investment that went into this thing. Now real quick, before we add Gucci and make it official, let's go ahead, move her label onto the enclosure. We're gonna put it right in the middle. I think will look good, right smack dab in the center, just like so. We'll adjust it as we need, and that way the enclosure is ready to go. So we've got our label on, as you can see. Now let's add Gucci. Alrighty, Gucci, here we go, big girl, here we go. Everybody, let's move Gucci to her new home. 3, a 2, a 1, here she goes. And ta-da! There you go, Gucci. Welcome. Welcome to your new home. Guys, this is the start of a new chapter in the reptile room. Gucci gets a new 75-gallon tank setup. There you go, Gucci. Are you happy or what? Are you happy? She just squeezed her fat gut. Oh my goodness, what are you doing, Gucci? She just squeezed her giant fat gut all the way up to the top. Gucci, stop it. Gucci, you're destroying it. Oh my gosh. Gucci, look at your fat gut. You can't sit up there. You're sliding down. There's nowhere for you to go. Her setup looked good while it lasted, I guess, guys. I'm not sure how much longer it's going to last with all of this destruction she's causing. Oh my. Gucci! Gucci! Oh my. Well, I guess let's just take a better look at Gucci's setup while she ransacks it. So let's try to get some good footage before it's destroyed. Well, y'all, that was it for building and setting up Gucci's cage. Now, as you can see, this enclosure, this beautiful enclosure that we have set up is massive. As a matter of fact, it's as long as Blaze's enclosure down on the bottom rack. Make sure you guys drop a comment. Let me know down in the comments, what do you guys think of this setup? Was it worth the time? Was it worth the effort? Did you enjoy the video? Do you think Gucci will enjoy it? Let me know once again down in the comments. And with all of that being said, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. I say it every video. And hey, stay tuned for some future videos with this giant setup. I will see you all in the next one. Peace! Gucci, you better not destroy this setup, okay? Take care of your new home. Take care of your new home. Okay, bye, Gucci.